NRL, round 25, the New Zealand Warriors up against the Manly Sea Eagles up here in Auckland. This is going to be a tough one. I've always said this is going to be one of the games we might struggle with in the back end here. Can't wait to see how this one plays out. Hey team, welcome back to the Warriorholic. Before I get into this review today, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all my supporters, everyone who's hit that subscribe button. I achieved my goal for the whole season of reaching 1,000 followers. Still got 3 games to go in the regular season and the final, so absolutely over the moon. So thank you so much for everyone who did hit that subscribe button. To everyone who's commented, the likes, all of the interaction, it's been outstanding. It's kind of mind-blowing really. I thought when I began this, would 5 or 10 people actually sit down and watch what I had to say? To think, well over 1,000 people now are subscribed. And something like 13,000 hours of my content that people have sat through. It's pretty mind-blowing. So thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate it. Onwards and upwards, but it wouldn't be the same without all your interaction. So please keep it up. And if you're listening for the first time, we'd love to have you on the channel. So please hit that subscribe button too. Alrighty, let's get into the footy. Off the back of another tough win there against the Tigers. But hey, what's that? We're at 8 from the past 10 now. We might have had a couple of tough ones, but the Warriors have won 5 from 5. So many years gone by, we would have lost some of those ones. We wouldn't have been able to close them out when things weren't going our way, but we've done it. We've found a way to win ugly. And what more could you want? We've always said, let's take 2 ugly points over a fancy game that you end up losing in the last minute. So well done to the boys. But this is not going to be an easy one this weekend again. Up against a really plucky Manly Sea Eagles side here. We know that, we've had a tough record against them over the years. They haven't been to New Zealand for a while, but man, I'm a little bit nervous about this. I'm hopefully going to be at the game if this bloody just turns out to be a light cold and not another dose of COVID, as you can hear by the croaky voice. BCE, he's just one of those players that he just knows how to pull something out of his ass, pull a game out from, underneath the team. He's done it for Australia against the Kiwis. He's done it for Queensland against New South Wales, and he's done it for Manly against so many teams in the NRL. As clutch as SJ when it comes to sinking those last-minute, drop goals, getting those 40-20s to turn the whole momentum of a game, pulling off a strip or that big tackle, chasing people down who should be way too fast for him to catch. We just know he's one of those players, so any team he's in, you can never take for granted. You've got those big effort players like Trbojevic here as their leader. He works as hard and means as much to them as Tohu means for us. Speed to burn, and Jason Saab and Calder out up wide there on the wings. Ruben Garrett playing really awesome at fullback there. A couple of massive edge back rowers there in Olakau'atu and Tuolangi. Man, we're going to have our hands full, but I'm pretty sure the boys are ready. I'm pretty sure that we will have them switched on. I'm pretty sure they'll want to be making a real big statement now heading into the finals. Before we sort of get into this week, just touching on what Manly managed to pull off against the Panthers in the weekend there. What did it end up? 24-12 loss. But shit, they really brought it. I think few people would have thought it would have been that close. They probably expected a massive blowout like we saw from some of the other top clubs in the weekend. So no one really would have expected that Manly front row to hold up against the might of Penrith there, but Sipley and Kempe, boy, they brought the aggression. Man, did they play well, far in excess of what their stats have shown from this year. So I don't think we're going to get an easy run over the top of them. Both very big boys. Like I said, they might not have the big stats, but shit, they stood up last week, and I expect them to this weekend. And again, Olakau'atu and Tuolangi on the edges are massive ball-playing players. Not an easy one-on-one tackle for anyone, so we have to double up on them, which can create overlap. So this is going to be a real challenge for our boys. But I think man for man, we can more than match them. If we play as a team and play to our potential, we should be able to grind out another one if we really switch things on. Who knows what could happen, but they're coming in with a pretty high level of confidence, nothing to lose. And as we saw, one of the other key factors in that game against the Panthers is really going crazy and spinning it wide like the old Warriors ball back in the day. Real helter-skelter stuff with 4 or 5 touches in their own 20 and then making a break and then having another 2 or 3 touches to end to get, getting all the way down the other end there, throwing Hail Mary passes left, right and centre, which really disrupted the Panthers' structured defence. And as we've got a very Panthers-like defence at times with a structure, it could be a challenge for us. We saw what happened on the weekend there when we weren't switched on. They managed to burn us on the outside. Same thing that we've seen a couple of times over recent weeks when we're not really switched on and we don't have the fastest wingers and centres in the competition. We get Saab out on a break there, it could be all over. So hopefully the boys are switched on. Hopefully if they've watched those tapes, hopefully I've got the structures ready to handle it. I'm pretty sure we can do it when we're holding them off our line, but it's just those breaks from around the halfway that concern me a little bit. Rightio, let's have a look how the two teams stack up. Over the years, 37 games, and they've won 25. We've only won 12, so they're completely dominant over us. Obviously been a bit of a bogey team over the years. But hopefully, being in that we're both in very different sort of form this season, that we may be able to get one back up over them. We're sitting here with 14 wins. Read it, people. 14 wins already, and we've still got 3 games to go. I think we only need to get one more game to beat 2011's win record. We're sitting in 3rd. They've got 9 wins from 21, sitting in 12th. But again, the table means nothing. We learnt that from the Tigers in the weekend. Probably going to be the spoon, but man, they're playing some good footy at the moment. So, you just can't even look at that table and think that it's going to impact on the game. For and against, likewise. We're sitting there at 515 for, 386 against for a plus 129. They're 427 against, and 447 against for minus 47. But it means nothing on the weekend or on Friday night there. 25 to 18 for a plus 7 for us. 20 to 22 for them for minus 2. So, when you look at it on average, it's not a huge difference here. Just the 9, that's only a try and a half. Form guide, though, over the past 5 weeks, 5 in a row, baby. That bloody South loss has finally dropped off that card there. So I'm happy to see all blue W's there for the boys. Just the 2 wins out of their last 5. So looking at 5 game totals there, we're 169 for, 82 against for a plus 87. They're 90 for, 113 against for a minus 22. So that's a pretty big differential there. We're on an average there of 34 to 16. So that's one of our best 5 game averages for the whole season there. Particularly with some of those big wins in there and only an average of 16 against. That's definitely top 4 material there when you're getting down to that sort of level there. I think the Panthers are about on average 12, so just a little bit behind them. We're plus 18. They're 18 for, 23 against with a minus 5. But again, it doesn't say much when they start throwing the ball around like they did in the weekend. Alrighty, next up, completion rates here, basically the same. 78 versus 77. Man, we need to get that back up over the 80s in a hurry. We had some games there we were completing up over 90%. We've got to get back into that, get those passes on the money, stop throwing the ball behind each other or throwing it onto the ground and so forth. Holding that ball in the tackle. Tackle efficiency, again, very similar, 88.2 versus 87.3. It's really funny, isn't it? We're sitting 3rd, they're sitting 12. Both those stats almost identical. Try scored here, 90 for us, sitting on 8th, 73 for them on 13th. Our highest try scorer there is Daley on 18, now on 6th. I think he's about 3 off the top now. Garrick there with 12 from his, he's sitting in 17th. Try assist, SJ. He's basically sitting first equal there with Drinkwater because Drinkwater's played less games. I guess he gets to sit on first, but SJ with 24 and Drinkwater with 24. DCE with 14 there, sitting on 14th, which is kind of surprising. Next up, line breaks. 121 for us, sitting in 4th. 95 for them in 13th. But on an individual basis there, Dallin with 18, he's in 12th, and Garrick there with 20 and 9th. It's something that we've often, on an individual basis, had less than the teams we've been playing recently, but as an overall, we get more. So it's good to see that it's not just one person getting all our line breaks there. Tackle breaks, 686 on 12th, 626 on 16th, not a huge difference there. 72 there for Chance, he's in 32nd. Olakau'atu there, 73, he's in 29th. Very similar again. Into the defensive side of things, tackles made 7,189 for us. We're sitting there in third, 6,692 for them, 17th again. I've got no idea how you read that. Is it good to be number one making the most tackles, or is it a sign you're on defence too much? I'm not 100% sure there, particularly when we've got less, about the same amount of missed tackles as them. 692 for Tohu, 21st. And 770 there for Croker. He's averaging a lot of bloody tackles there for a hooker. Missed tackles, 676, 13th worst for us. And 669 for them, 15th. Good to see old Jackson here. He's 17 now and 15th. I think he was about 10th at one point when I started measuring these. And 60 missed tackles and 33rd there for Olakau'atu. So overall, like I've said a lot of weeks, even last week with the Tigers, the stats are very, very similar, other than the amount of tries scored and the wins and the points for and against. So it's really hard to just sit there and judge a team purely on the stats, but I do hope it gives you an interesting insight there. Alrighty, into the fullbacks. Great to see Shaun's back. I really hope he is back and ready. It was a pretty bad one the other week against the Titans. I just hope the boy's feeling okay. You do worry about him. You see all these, not that recently retired, but guys I grew up watching, so many of them now with early onset just dementia and the like, Spud Carroll and Wally Lewis now. It's concerning, so I appreciate guys like Shaun's, effectively putting their life on the line to play footy for us to sit there and enjoy a game. So stay safe, my man, but it's great to have you back there. Up against Ruben Garrick. Interesting matchup. Like a lot of these are. 18 games for Chance with 180 average metres, 86.8 tackle efficiency, 72 tackle breaks, 6 line breaks, 13 try assists and 5 tries. Up against Garrick, they're 20 games, 150 metres, 81.7, tackle breaks 71, line breaks 20, try assists 6 and tries 12. So reasonably similar players in that. Garrick's not a Reece Walsh type of electric player who's bouncing all over the place, but he is a pretty attacking player. You can see there he's got a lot of, he's got the try assists, quite a few line breaks, so he's got the speed as well. So interesting matchup, but for me the key now bringing back in Chance is like Tuaupiki, who was outstanding, for the first couple of games he's actually been in there for the starting lineup. For a guy his size, his ability to hold his own at NRL level is just amazing, and I think he's going to develop into an outstanding player if we can keep him once Chance retires. But again, without the regular game time, that just shows, a little 1% is the ability to put that ball on the spot to get those tries over or to link with his men. We've seen Chance really take that to a new level over the past month, so from that aspect, I'm really stoked to have Chance back. And just as the effort areas, the team must get energy from that with him taking all those hit-ups. I've no idea how he manages to do it with the amount of gas that he seems to have in his tank. But again, don't take Garrett for granted. That guy can have a massive impact on the game like we saw last week. So I'm going to give it slightly there to Chance. He's just he's one of my favourites as a fanboy there. Just I love everything he brings to the team. Like I've said before, as great as Reece Walsh is playing, I just think for our culture, Chance is our man. So I'm glad to have him back there. Alrighty, Dallin up against Saab. This will be a tough one for Dallin there. Like I've said before, I think he's been measured at having one of the fastest top end speeds in the NRL, but I just don't think those little short legs like mine have the ability to match it with a guy like Saab. I think he's probably the fastest guy in the comp. Once you've seen him in a break, he's just the length of those strides. It's just insane. Once he gets up to top speed, I don't think we've got anyone who gets close to matching him. But looking at the contributions, running meters 150 versus 114. You can see that Saab's definitely not the guy who's taking a lot of their dirty hit-ups to get up off that line. Being a tall, lean guy, he does get knocked over easy. But Dallin, he's just continuing to improve with his, those runs off our line and make those post-contact meters. So I think Dallin gets that point there. Tackle efficiency though down there at 71.8 versus 80, so Saab probably a better defender. Tackle breaks Dallin 51, which it goes to show you with Saab, but even with his speed, only 18 tackle breaks. So he's more going round, not going through. So that means that their forwards will be doing a little bit more work without him being able to do those big hit-ups. Line breaks. This is an interesting one down there with 17 versus 15, so it's not just all about the top-end speed. Try assists 2 and 4, so Saab can put his wingers away. 18 tries versus 7. That's quite surprising there for Saab with a guy of that much speed having played 16 games to only score 7 tries. Probably silly of me saying that out aloud now, because he'll probably go and get a couple against us to burn me, but hopefully Dallin takes care of him. Just purely on try scoring form and effort over the past few weeks, I'm giving that to Dallin. Bias, of course. This will be another brilliant one here of two absolutely brick house wingers. Montoya up against Vega, I guess that's how you say it. Apologies for the pronunciation on some of the Pacifica names there. I try my best, but 21 games versus 4. So he hasn't had a lot of games, but I did notice him play one early on in the year. Man, he put on some big Steve Maddo type hits when he comes in. Gets his timing really, really good when he comes off his line every now and then to hit the opposition centre. He's not quite as tall as Montoya. He's a lot more stocky, but they're both, honestly, they're built like brick shit houses, so there'll be some big collisions coming from those two. They can both tackle or put a decent hit on, and they both run bloody hard. But Montoya there with 151 versus 114 running metres, so he does more work there. Tackle efficiency 71.6 versus 86.7. Not a great stat there, but I think having only played the 4 games there, and given that wings don't make a huge amount of tackles, you're probably talking maybe 1 or 2 missed tackles every second game to be the difference there. Line break 17 versus 2, but again you've got what we've got there, 5 times the number of games, but still more on average there for Montoya. The 1 try assist and no try assist there for Vega. 8 tries versus none. Again, I think this is just going to be the battle of the who can run the hardest into each other and bounce off and come away okay. Can't wait to see what's going to happen, but of course I'm giving it to my man Montoya just purely on the fact he's played every game this year, hasn't let us down. Every week it seems Rocco Berry's getting tested against some really good centres, and this is kind of a battle of the young guns here. Kohler there only really in his second full season here of NRL, and he didn't really play a full season last year. 10 games this year versus Berry versus 16 for Kohler. Running meters 75 versus 133, so Kohler's got one of the higher running meters for their backs. Tackle efficiency 92.1 versus 79. Tackle breaks 23 versus 46, but again more games there. Line breaks 5 versus 2, probably similar on the per game rate. Try assist 7, really good there for Berry versus 2, and 2 tries versus 6. Again, speed. They say that Kohler was a 10 point something, rather 100 metre runner back in high school, something, almost an urban legend like you hear with old Cook being a beach sprinter or whatever. But I feel like Berry's held the some of those faster centres and wing combinations quite well this season. Particularly we saw what he did against the Gold Coast there. I think he's more than capable of controlling him, but we've just got to make sure we keep our line intact, because if we get those bloody a little bit of a miss there, and either him or Saab get through the gap, no one's going to be chasing them down. And unfortunately, Challenge, as good as he is, he's not going to catch either of those two there. So hopefully Berry gets that tackling technique right, gets the timing right. Hopefully kick a bit more for him on the right hand side there, and he can put a bit of pressure on those guys. So 50-51 for me. Berry had a little bit of a tight, quiet game last week. Not as most impactful, not a bad game, but just not his most impactful game of the season. So looking for him to have a big one up against in front of a home crowd up there. We'll call it 50-50, eh? Adam Pompey against Morgan Harper. Morgan Harper hasn't seen much footy lately. He been dropped down there. I think he's not being re-signed next season. I'm not sure where he's actually going. I've always quite liked him. He's a relatively solid player, but probably he doesn't look like a footy player. Old Uncle Bully from once we were Warriors there. But yeah, he is a pretty solid player, and we'll see by his numbers there. So 21 games versus 6 versus 104 metres. Great to see Pompey managing to maintain that average up over 100 now versus 116 for Harper. 85.8 versus 85 tackle efficiency, basically the same there. Tackle breaks 57, but obviously more than three times the amount of games there. Versus 10. Line breaks 6 versus 1. Try assists 8 versus 3, and 4 tries versus 1. Again, not the most intimidating centre. Pompey's managed to handle some of the best centres in the game this year, so I see no reason he won't handle Harper. But he is pretty quick. He's, for not a very big guy, he's got an ability to kind of bounce out of a tackle and get a pass away as well. So we'll have to work hard there to tie him up, but I think Pompey's got more than enough to deal with Harper. He's definitely a bigger boy. This will be a strange one because I was listening to SEN this afternoon, and I can't remember whether I was saying one of the Aussie papers reporting that Schuster's going to get moved back to lock. They're just really not happy with his particularly his defensive effort there at 6. So I'm not sure whether this matchup will actually play out. But if it does, what do we got here? 10 games versus 14. Average of 88 running metres versus 47. Tackle efficiency 88.5 versus 87. Nothing in that. Try assist 1 versus 13. That's pretty good numbers there for try assist for Schuster. Line break assist 5, 10 for Schuster. 6 tries versus 2. So I feel sorry for Schuster in some ways. What do you do when you're a player his age, when someone offers you reportedly $800K a year when you're unproven? Who would turn that down? But as soon as you start taking those big paydays, we saw what happened with Luke Brooks or Anthony Milford, that when you don't quite live up to the big paycheck, there's so much pressure goes on. He's just got so much this year. He's obviously one of those guys who struggles with his training and his diet, so he's never going to be naturally the fittest guy out there. Maybe he doesn't have the mental strength to really discipline himself, so it seems like he's constantly having to be, mollycoddled by the staff there. But they must have seen something in him to sign him there. But it looks like they're going to drop him back to lock this week, so that'll be an interesting shift there. I'm not sure he comes into 5/8. But if they do end up going toe for toe, so Metcalf again, his attack cannot be questioned, his speed, his support play has really been outstanding, but I just hope he can start to build that connection a little bit more with Pompey. I heard someone mention that I felt like it was a bit of Metcalf struggling to connect there, but someone mentioned that maybe it's the fact that Pompey can't sort of keep up with that immediate acceleration, but something's not quite working on that left edge. Hopefully that does click, because we've got so much potential there with Pompey and Montoya. Let's see how he goes. I wish him nothing but the best. I think he's going to be an absolute rock star of the future. But again, I just got to see a little bit more from him at the moment, because Tamati Martin is going to be knocking on that door. We just know he's a seasoned professional. So if he does come up against Schuster, I think he'll burn him, because Schuster's not the fastest guy. But it'll be a difficult one to sort of handle there. That said, they'll be probably on the opposite side of the field. But yeah, I'm going to give it to Metcalf, just because of the fact that Schuster's got so much on his shoulders at the moment, being played out on the wing and defence and so forth. Hard to see. He knocked on a lot of balls on the weekend there against Penrith. Confidence was down. But again, as soon as you say it out loud, he could come back to bite me. But yeah, we'll give it to Metcalf, eh? Wow, what a matchup here. Two of the class halfbacks, veterans. Got a 300 gamer there. Not sure if SJ will get to the 300 mark, but what was his 250th recently? Both very, very experienced. 21 games versus 19. Average kicking there, 523 versus 471. Tackle efficiency, exactly the same, 92. Try assist, 24 versus 14, as I mentioned before. Line break assist, 21 versus 15. 8 tries versus 7. It surprises me to see how low the numbers are there with Cherry Evans's try assist and line break assists. He just never seems to be out of the game. It's it's hard to, I don't know, you had to summarise how you compare the two of them because they're both always on the ball. They control the play so much. But I feel like DC is just that real, maybe he's a loud guy. He seems to have a bigger presence on the field. SJ playing that real conductor role, but it's just, if they lost DCE, I think it would be a bigger loss than us losing SJ, as good as SJ's been, because DCE is just, mate, I don't see anyone else having as big an impact on their game as him, maybe Jake, but we've got guys like Addin and Tohu who have just as big an impact on our team as SJ, but both world class. I really hope SJ's quad's healing up so he can get that kicking game right. We've got to make that competitive. Vega over on the Montoya's wing is a little bit dodgy under the high ball, so we may see a little bit of ball going down our left-hand side instead of the right-hand side, putting some pressure on him. He's not the tallest guy. Who knows? I think it was interesting to see that him mixing up those kicks going down the middle and down the left rather than all down the right the other day. Don't know if it was pre-planned. Don't know if how it ended up, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few down the left-hand side there to Vega. So I'm going to give this to SJ. I'm going to trust my man. He had a slightly quietish game for his standards last week. We haven't seen 2 in a row of those all season. He genuinely comes back strong if he has a slightly off one. But yeah, it's going to be a real battle of the superstars here, but I'll give it slightly to SJ because he's going to be our Daley winner. Current Warrior versus ex-Warrior. Warriors Junior there in Sipley. Ordinarily, I would have just expected, Addin would, and he probably will dominate this. He's dominated every team he's come up against this season, but as I said, Sipley had a massive game up against James Fisher-Harris the other day. So I expect him to not take a backward step coming up against his old team there. He'll be willing to challenge Big Addin. So we've got 21 games versus 12 there, 174 metres versus 106, 65 post-contact metres versus 39. Both with really good tackle efficiencies there, 96 versus 97.7. That's getting close to 100 there for Sipley. Tackle break 65 versus 31, but that 31's pretty good considering he's only played 12 games, half the number of the games. 7 tries versus 1. After that effort in the weekend from Addin, you expect nothing less than for him to dominate this. Hopefully that ankle's not too bad. I can't imagine he's a guy's going to let it bother him too much. He'll strap it up, maybe get a bit of a needle in there. But yeah, it'll be an interesting battle between these two here, but Addin all the way. Bunty getting the recall here. I was a bit curious as to what happened with Barnett, but apparently he had some a cut that he had to get restitched or something this week, so that's why he's dropped out. Obviously with stitches in somewhere like a knee, you don't want to be having those pop open and pop over with infections and the like. So he drops out and brings Bunty back in up against Kempe here. I mentioned this in my post game. There was a lot of criticism of Bunty, and I was a little bit frustrated with him early on, focusing on his attack rather than his defense. But I think he does bring a lot to that middle, particularly in the first 20. He's just so rock solid in his defense, and he takes a lot of that energy out of the opposition. So I'm quite curious to see how he goes back in there. Kempe had a really strong game up against the Panthers as well. So 18 games versus 17 there. Only 58 metres for Bunty, but only 89 for Kempe. So he's not a big running, big runner. He's normally more of a bench player, I guess. But interesting to hear Bunty on 19.6 post contact, but Kempe's getting 37.8 from his 89 metres. That's a lot. He must obviously get a bit of forward momentum there, but just not playing big minutes up until now. Tackle efficiency, 97.4 for Bunty, outstanding. Right up there with Sipley, almost at 100% there, versus 90, which is nothing to be scoffed at. Tackle breaks, 14 versus 19, a try apiece. This would be a good even matchup. They're both not huge running meter guys. They obviously get a bit of tackling done. They're not the dominant prop in their team normally, but I hope Bunty, after having that bit of a break there, getting dropped down, just comes back and goes completely nuts and shows that he deserves to be there for the rest of the season. I think there's an opportunity, particularly when you come up against some of those big packs, that he does come back in. I think it's horses for courses and depending on who we're playing. But look for Bunty to have a big statement game and show why he should be back in there regularly. Wade Egan against Croker. Another one. I hope Egan's okay there after spending a bit of time there in hospital with the throat. Never had one of those myself, but it must be scary. I've kind of had a few slight bangs on it in footy in the world, but not with an elbow of a solid guy like he received the other day. But I don't think that they would have risked him with something like that. So he must be fully ready to go. But who knows? Maybe he is 50-50. I've just named him, but Lussig's in the reserves there. Let's assume he's playing. 17 games against 20 there. What do we got? The average running 50 versus 29, 93 versus 93 tackle efficiency, 5 try assists versus a 2, 9 line break assists versus 2, 5 tries apiece. Croker, he's not exactly a world-class light-him-up, hooker, but he gets through a power tackling. He's a real workhorse. But I think Egan's, his ruck manipulation, his passing out of dummy half, if he's playing, if he's on form, is going to be a real point of difference for us there. I pray we don't lose Egan again. He's just going to be absolutely vital to us winning, as we go through this back end of the season here. So I pray he's safe and well and going to play. If not, I'd expect basically just he would swap with Lussick and we'd keep the same bench there. But head to head, we've got to give it to Egan if he is playing and he's playing at fully fitness. He's going to be a class above, I think. Jackson Ford is going to have his hands full here against big Olakau'atu. 19 games versus 21. 105 versus 126 running metres. 126 is pretty high up there for an edge back rower. 90% tackle efficiency, but 35 tackles a game there for Ford versus 90, almost 94 there, but only making 26 tackles. For Olakau'atu, line breaks 8 versus 9, which is interesting to see. Smaller man there in Jackson, but he's got almost as many line breaks. Tackle breaks are down a little bit there, 42 versus 69, 4 tries versus 8. He's a handful to handle right on their line. We see that they'll use a lot of block plays to try and put him through a hole. If he's one-on-one, very, very difficult to stop. I do rate Jackson's one-on-one sort of head-on defence, but geez, if we get him up against Metcalf, that's going to be an absolute nightmare for him to try and stop. So we're going to make sure we double up and cover him well, but not leave those gaps out wide. But Jackson has just stepped up and improved week on week. So I'm gonna say that he'll hold his own here, but I had a few chats with Waz up at the start of the season here in our reviews, and we just sort of wondered if this kind of Olakau'atu kind of big, rangy running back row was something we were missing. We've seen Marata really step up with his running recently, and I think he's starting to take that role. But yeah, I do. I'm a big fan of this fella. He offers a huge amount, so I'm going to call it 50-50, but pray that Ford has another match of the round or match of the season and ends up dominating him. Niakore against Tuilangi. Sorry guys, I'm not sure about that. Niakore, I'm stoked with the way he's starting to really get involved in the attack with, not sort of playing a ball-playing role. He's just really smashing that up, using his aggression. He's not the hugest guy. He looks bigger on TV than I think he does actually in real life. He's not the heaviest of the back rows that we come up against. And when I met him, I was kind of surprised. He wasn't as huge as I was expecting, but he certainly holds his own and he runs with aggression. Tuilangi's not a small boy either, run similar kind of lines. So 16 games versus 15. Average running metres up over 100 finally for Niakore, so that's great to see. Versus 74. 91% tackle efficiency versus basically 90. 27 tackles a game versus 25. 5 line breaks versus 2. 26 tackle breaks versus 17. 2 tries versus 1. So based on the stats, and I think of their 2 back rows, Tuilangi's not quite on the same level. I'd like to see that Niakore really step up and dominate this one here. We've seen that controlled aggression last week. We've seen a much higher involvement. I expect that to continue from here on in. One of the most experienced players in our full pack. So I'm going to give my man Niokore this one. Not overly comfortably, but I'd say he'll do it. And this one, well, like I said before, two, leaders who are the heart of their team, that you take them both out and they make a massive impact. Trbojevic, probably a much more emotive, more vocal player compared to Tohu, but I really like the way Tohu's got really, really developed his ability to politely challenge the refs lately. He was a little bit quiet in his early days as a captain, but now he's seems to be really confident in going up there and challenging the ref, and he's very articulated, and he seems to know the rules well, so he's quite well received by the refs. Jakey gets pretty excited there at times, but his emotion would be contagious for his teammates. 18 games versus 15 there, because Trbojevic has had a few injuries this year, plus his state of O. This one surprised me. 133 average running meters for Tohu versus 100 for Jake. I would have thought he would have been a little bit higher up there. 94% tackle efficiency with 38.4 tackles versus 95 with 40 tackles. So it's not often Tohu comes up against guys who do tackle more than him. We've had a couple recently, but yeah, 17 tackle breaks versus 4 surprised me as well. I would have thought Jake would have more tackle breaks than that. Try assist 4 for Tohu, none for Jake. Again, he's a ball-playing player, but yeah, and no tries for him, 2 for Tohu. Great to see Tohu going back-to-back. It'd be great to see him have a three-peat. Notice that Tohu only had one knee strapped up last weekend. Hope that's a sign one of his knees is going right. You still see his hands and his finger heavily taped there. The man's a walking dummy, but shit, he's a machine. Look, I'm at home. I'm going to back him to come out of this one on top of Jake Turbo. And if he can dominate that matchup, I think that goes a long way to our team having a success. So I put my faith in Big Tohu. I hope he doesn't have to play 80 minutes again. As bigger a motor as he's got, I'd love to have him have a bit more energy coming in for those finals. But if he has to, I know he'll do it. And then we get the benches. What do we got here? Dylan Walker, Jazz Tavanga, Bailey Sirinen, and Josh Curran up against Jake Arthur, Dean Madison, Aaron Woods, Ethan Bullimore. It's pretty hard to name the positions really, because you've already got Walker there. He's kind of like a 13 cover there, but he's pretty much a middle player. He does pretty much anything. High energy. As I said, I hadn't read, but I'd heard a few people mention that he had a back issue that he did in the game before last, and he seemed to be struggling a bit last week. He's one of those guys you'd really see have 2 poor games in a row. Hopefully he's back to full fitness and back at his best, because he's just such a game changer coming on there. We've got Jazz, pretty much a middle player, but he can cover an edge there. Ciro there covers pretty much every position on the field, but predominantly in hooker. But I've got to say, I do like the fact when he's come on at on an edge or in the middle recently, when he hasn't been needed at hooker, he's definitely been putting some shoulders into ribs, so it's good to see that he can have that impact. And Curran, I was surprised that when I did that review of the weekend that his numbers, particularly with his running meters, went higher, because he seems to be really heavily involved, and it's just acceleration off the line. Both him and Jazz, the energy is really outstanding. So Jake Arthur, he came on as 18th man on the weekend. He's had a bit of a chop and change coming from para mid-season. I think he's a really good player, but he's just never really found that place where he gets a regular start. And obviously he's not going to get one here next year with Brooks coming in. So it seems a bit of a strange move for him to go to Manly. Maybe he would have been better off going to somewhere like the Tigers or St George, where he would have got more footy. But he's a good, solid player. We've seen him come on in the grand final there and so forth and hold his own. Madison, solid second rower there. Shaun Woods, mate, I can't believe he's still playing. He seems like about 50 years old. I do like him when you hear him talk on NRL 360 and that. He's got a bit of character around him. I do like him. He does a job there for them. Ethan Bullimore, I really like that guy. He's very similar to the Jazz type player. He's not huge, but he just runs with a power but on his highs, just full of energy. So I think he'll more than match the energy of the likes of Jazz. But other than that, you've got to give it to our bench again. All 4 of those guys can do a job. They cover numerous positions. They come on with energy. Hopefully it's a point of difference. We're not up against the biggest pack in the world this week, other than Olakau'atu on the edge there, and Sipley's not a small fella. But I don't think we have to worry too much about going against a team full of, a bench full of props. I expect our energy to be too much for these guys. So, experience-wise as well, we've got a little bit of an edge on them. So to summarise, look, I've talked Manly up, and I think that does show them the respect that, Jake Trbojevic is in there. They're probably, sitting in about 8th at the moment. He made such a big difference. No, not Jake, Tom Trbojevic. But you can't just rely on one player. But with DCE in there, with Jake Trbojevic, they're always going to be a trouble. But I do believe in our team. I do believe in our ability to play as a team. I do believe our ability to deal with adversity. I didn't feel like we were going to lose that game on the weekend at any point. Even when we were struggling, I just knew that we'd find a way to grind that one out. Probably a similar position this week. We'll find that we'll get a couple of tries put on us, maybe even back-to-back, which is something we really need to work on. But we've got to keep that focus. But I trust we'll get it done, but I just hope this is the game where we click. Being back at Bounce Smart there with that atmosphere, I just hope we get that precision back. Hope we do a number on them, and then we can just start to really, really to ramp things up. But hopefully, as I said, I'll be there. Cold or flu, whatever the hell this is, pending. I hope it doesn't put off my trip. Can't wait to get up there. Looking forward to running into a whole bunch of people. I spoke to Waz Up. He's going to be there, so I'm looking forward to meeting him for the first time in person there. A lot of the other guys like Warriors Fans TV and those sort of guys will be there. But if anyone out there is watching, you do see me there, like I said, please come up and say good day. I'd love to meet you all. It's awesome interacting via a screen here, but it's always better to meet in person. Looking forward to be part of the whānau up there. Let's sell it out. The weather's looking okay. Big win to the Warriors. Roll on in. 3 more games to go, including this one. I'm all in, boys. Let's get it. Up the wires.